So typography with Adobe InDesign, that's the session about. But InDesign is not only about working with text, it's also about working with images. And now with the Creative Cloud version, we have so much interactive options as well. So really InDesign became a powerhouse of lots of features. It was always probably the biggest application among these three, Photoshop, Illustrator and InDesign. But now that we have a direct connection to building apps from InDesign, I think that's an amazing thing. And if you are interested about digital publishing, there are more lectures about that, and I will also talk about it in one of my lectures. But as you can see, in most of the applications, we have the panels, and InDesign has probably almost 3 times more panels than Photoshop. So that already shows how much more options we have here. And only for, you can see that I just go into interactive and we have around almost 10 panels there. Or maybe, yeah, it's more than 10 or 10 around that. And then for typography, we have the type and tables, where we have again a lot of panels. And these are the things that I'm going to talk about today. So if you are using InDesign, you can save a lot of time if you know these features. No matter what you do with InDesign, if you use it for digital publishing, print, or even web. Because type will always be an essential part of your whole workflow. Okay, and this is a PDF file that I'm going to share with everyone. So not only the recording of this session, but also this. Actually, I will share the InDesign file itself, so you can practice what I show today. So this will be all available after this presentation. If you want it quickly, I can give it to you through a pen drive after the lecture as well. So this is a CC version, InDesign CC file, but I can save it back to a version which can be opened in previous versions of InDesign as well. So I just wanted to make it a bit more interactive so you can really practice and try all these features that we are going to go through today. So let me just show you a list. This is what I'm trying to cover in 45 minutes. It's quite a lot to go through, so let's just start with this. And again, as I said, feel free to ask questions while we are going ahead. So first of all, the user interface, the way it's best to set up whenever you work with type is probably to use the typography panel, workspace, sorry. So this is where you can select workspaces. For example, digital publishing will reorganize and we will have all the interactive panels here. And there's the folio overlays and folio builder, which is an online panel. In most of the applications now, in the Creative Cloud, we have these online panels, which only work if you are online. And this is a good example. It had to wait for a bit to download the latest things from the internet. So this is, and also Folio Builder is connected to online. That's how I can create new folios. And then it comes up with the Creative Cloud thing. I'll just close that. I don't need that now. Okay, so I'm just going to switch back quickly to typography. And as you can see, this is the panel we have here. It's probably a little bit, let me just reset this. I already used it differently. So that's the way it sets it up by default. And as you can see, we have all the panels here that we will need. Most importantly, I would say we need the paragraph and character panels. So these two. And that's a good thing about InDesign and all the Adobe applications. You can very quickly and easily customize, move around panels, dock them in, and then you can save them as workspaces as well. So if these are the panels that you want to work with, you can really have them in front, and then all the others can be minimized into an iconic state. So we have much more space. And when I want to save this, I can go and create new workspace, and I can call it my type, for example. Okay, then let's go through these features. Saving fonts with documents. How many of you use packages, saving packages from InDesign? Okay, some of you. You might know that packages, or you might have that problem before. Actually, how many of you use InDesign? There might be some. Great, okay, so almost probably everyone. You might run into that issue or problem Who's talking? What is this? Okay, that was interesting. Broadcast. What is this? Is it another presentation or it's? Is it? It only comes in when I talk. Okay, so okay, I will just try to talk louder. You might run into issues with InDesign when you have the fonts missing for an InDesign document, or you have images, the links missing and stuff like that, especially when you are sharing or collaborating with others. Now, to make sure that you don't run into these issues, you can use the package option. That's File, Package, very easy. It's like saving your InDesign document, but what package adds to that is that it saves all the fonts that you use and all the images into one folder, and then you can give that folder to your client or your co-worker or whoever needs to work on the same project, or most importantly, if you need to work on the same project on another computer, again, you can do the same thing. Now with Creative Cloud, you can upload it to your Creative Cloud account and then just simply have the package there, instead of just simply saving the InDesign file itself. Do you know why is it not good to, for example, embed images into InDesign files? Because that's another way of doing it, to embed images. But what's the downside of that? Do you know? Yes, and then slows down the InDesign file and everything will be more slow and more difficult to work with. So it's better not to embed images, it's better to save packages. And whenever you save packages, you can see these are all the fonts that I will be able to export and put it in my package. So that's a very important thing, and it's good to make sure that you know about this. And the good thing is that whenever you save the package, it automatically creates a folder for those fonts, and they are automatically installed as well as soon as you open the InDesign file. And that some people doesn't know. So the fonts, for example, these two fonts are on my computer, Watergraph, the Walt Disney font, and Bebas. And if I save this document as a package, there will be the fonts next to the InDesign file. And if someone opens this on a computer where these two fonts are not available, thanks to the package, they automatically will be installed and uninstalled when the document is closed. Because otherwise it would just spread, and there might be licensing problems. But as long as there's the InDesign file and the package is active and open in InDesign, the fonts will be installed, so no problems. When it's closed, it's automatically uninstalled, so you don't have to worry about anything. It's a very, very clever thing the way they did with this. So it's definitely something good to remember to use this feature. Next one is track changes. Now, again, this is more about collaborating and working together in a team. And I worked in design teams in lots of design studios, and I can tell you, when it's about saving time, this feature is very useful, especially if you are working with copywriters. Is anyone here working with copywriters? Yeah, and then I'm sure you heard about track changes or maybe seen it used. Track changes is available in a panel, so it's from the editorial options. You can find it under Window, Editorial Track Changes, and this is, interestingly enough, it doesn't come up with the typography options, although I think it should be placed there as well. So track changes will work whenever you change something in the text. So for example, I don't know, let's just change Scandinavia. I will change something there, but this difference won't be visible only if I open the different view. You might know this view. You can find it under the Type menu, and it's the where is it? No, not the track changes. It shows that it's enabled. So track changes is enabled in the current story. But what we need is
Under glyphs.
Sorry?
Story?
Yeah, the story editor.
Under glyphs.
Glyphs.
Has up.
Yes, that's it. Story. There used to be a keyboard. No, not this one. The story editor we need. Story editor. Where is it? Layout. It must be here somewhere. Story editor. There was a command enter. No, not command enter. Command Y. That's it. Sorry. Command Y. And it has to be somewhere there as well. Story editor. Does anyone see it? View menu. Yes, all the way at the bottom. Command Y is the keyboard shortcut. You can find it here, story editor, and yeah, that's it. So once you are in this, you can see that the changes that I made in the text is visible in this, and the track changes will be able to show when it was changed and who changed it. So there's a username which you can set up on the file user, and there you can set up your name. So for example, I just type in Martin and I select my color. That's it. And if I now make any changes, I delete moods for example, and I press Command Y again, I can see that this change has been made by me at this time, and this is the change what I've done. And then if there's a review stage of this whole design process, here with the track changes it can be accepted or rejected. So I can say that this change is actually useful, so I accept it, but these amends won't be visible in the normal view. It will be only visible in this story editor view in InDesign. So track changes works together with story editor, and it only works if it's enabled. And what you need to do is enable it for a whole box or story. So if this text frame is selected, I can double click on it and see that the track changes is enabled. I can disable it or enable it again. Okay, so that's how it works. Okay, so that's track changes, and yeah, there's the story editor, Command or Control Y. That's the keyboard shortcut for it. Drop caps. Drop caps are very useful and very easy to set up in InDesign, and they always work with your paragraphs. So you might not know that whenever you press enter, that's a line break and that becomes a new paragraph. If you want to create a break, you can also use soft break with shift enter. Shift enter will create the soft break, enter will create a normal break. So now this became a new paragraph. And if I select these two paragraphs and I go to the drop cap options, I can assign the drop caps from here in the options bar as well, or also from the menus here on the right. In the paragraph panel, we have two values, the drop cap number of lines and the drop cap character number. So if I, for example, here increase the number of lines, then immediately the first characters of both paragraphs will become drop caps. And with this number here, I can always increase and tell how many lines I would like to cover with these characters. But this option here on the right decides how many characters will be used as drop caps. So it's very easy to set up. And the good thing about this is everything that you do in InDesign can be saved as a style. So this one, because it's in the paragraph panel, it's definitely in the paragraph styles. So here in the paragraph styles, if I click on new, and I double click on that. Oh no, I think I saved it into another one. That's it. Paragraph style. Here it immediately tells me that it's a sample text, and then it has drop cap lines 3 and drop cap characters 3. And these are the options that I can set up here. So it can be saved as a style, and then if I apply that style to any of my tags, for example this one here, and I just zoom back a bit, select that paragraph style, it immediately applies there. Apart from saving a style and using it again like this, what's the other big advantage of working with styles, paragraph and character styles in InDesign?
Global changes.
Sorry?
Global changes.
Global changes, which means if I change the style definition itself, everything will update in the whole document. So if you haven't started using styles yet, it's a high time to start using it. It's probably one of the most important style features of InDesign, and the good news is that now you have this also in Photoshop and Illustrator. They had it in Photoshop CS6, I think, first, character and paragraph styles. And it works exactly the same way as in InDesign. Both of these applications learn from InDesign. So that means now I have this paragraph style 1 applied to these 3 paragraphs. So if I deselect everything, useful keyboard shortcut also, Command A is selecting everything on your page, Command Shift A is deselect everything. That's quite often you need that to make sure that you don't have anything selected, and then you can double click on the definition, and let's just change something here. I go back to drop caps and I reduce the line weight, and if the preview is turned on, we can see it updates already everywhere. Okay, so that's very useful. And the other thing that you need to know about styles is that paragraph and character styles can be related to each other, but which one is superior? Who knows which one is superior? So if you have a paragraph where you have a paragraph style, but in that paragraph, let's just say, we have a character style defined as well. I'm going to add a character style on that word, okay? And I save that. So I create a new character style and save it as character style 1. Which one is superior, the character style or the paragraph style? Yes. So if I change the paragraph style, the character style will still stay the same. Okay? Because that's superior to the paragraph style. And that's, again, a bit of a confusing idea, because we would think that paragraph styles are bigger, but actually the character styles can overwrite. They are individual elements inside the paragraph style. And even if I change the paragraph style, let me just show you, if I go back to the paragraph style, and for example, I go into the basic character, advanced, where is it? What I want to do is increase, for example, I don't know, we can change the alignment to right. Of course, it will apply to everything, so the word where we have the character style also follows these changes. But when I change the character style, that's still the same, so it didn't change, only when I go into the character style and of course have the preview on. So that's superior, but they are connected, and you can even embed character styles into paragraph styles with nested styles. This option is here. You can find ways to embed character styles. That's again something that you might want to look into. That's a very useful feature. For example, I can show you, I just turn off the drop caps and I add the character style 1, and I say through, or maybe we can say up to, the first 3 words should use that character style that we define. And then every paragraph that I start in this paragraph style will always start the first 3 words with that character style that we just created. It's so easy. There's a lot of options in InDesign, but once you know how to use them, it's very easy and very user-friendly the way to set it up. So now you can see that we have this text here, okay, where I have one word which uses the character style 1, but I can always set that back to none. Here on the right, I just click on none, and then it removed it. But if I create a new paragraph, immediately it starts with the character style automatically, because it's defined in the paragraph style. Probably I said the style word 100 times in the last 5 minutes. Okay, so that's the drop caps and a bit about styles. Okay, then columns. For columns, there's also loads of features in InDesign, and the most easiest way to access these options is to press Command B or Control B on PC, and that will give you the text frame options. Now in the text frame options, first of all, these are the most important options for us. We have the column numbers, so we can increase or decrease that, again, to have the preview on. So we can add numbers, reduce the numbers, and the gutter is the distance between the columns. So if I have, let me just show you, if I have the I press W, and we will see these lines here, and that's the gutter. So if I go back, again press Command B, we can change the gutter as well easily. We'll extend it or remove it. You can also define the width of your columns, which will increase the text frame. You can see the text frame is increased in size. And then there's a very useful option called balance columns. Now if I turn that off, and let me just turn off the that view, it's easier to see it like this. You see that we have a big text frame now, and there's a huge empty gap here on the right. We might want to keep our text frame like this, but we just want to make sure that the two columns are balanced out. That's why we use balance columns. Obviously, if it's an odd number of lines, then it will still be a little bit unbalanced, but still much better than having a huge difference between them. Okay, so that and that works on the go. So if I make changes, I say I add enter here, you can see it automatically flows into the other column and back. Okay, even though there's a big gap here at the bottom, it still flows in the next one, so it balances it out automatically. Okay, so that's just the basic things about columns, but then we have the span and split columns option as well. When this is something that again is a very clever thing in InDesign, that even though you have a text frame which is set up with columns, you can still overlap those columns in specific parts where you need to. For example, headlines. So if a headline, like that one, you want it to flow over the other column, then you can just set up the span column option for it. So I can select that one here, the headline. And again, this is something you can set up in a style. So if the heading style is defined as a paragraph style and it uses the span columns option, then you automatically will always span into the columns of your frames. So what you need to do here is go to these options with the paragraph options, and there span columns, where is it? I can't see it now because it's yeah, that's it. It's always rearranges when you use it in different screen sizes. Now my resolution always goes in different places. So this is the option here. Span to means it will only span to 2 columns and it will stop there. Or if you have more columns in your document, you can even use span all. So make sure you have selected the text, and once you select span all, you can see now it goes all on them. And if I go back to the text frame and increase the number of columns, it will still be able to span across them because we set it to span all. The other interesting thing is if I have, let's just say, these 2 paragraphs selected, and I go to the same area where I choose that, we also have split columns, which will create an embedded column inside a column. So we have this column here on the right, and inside that, only for this text, I would like to split it into, again, 2 small columns. Okay, so split columns will create a mini section of my text frame, which has its own column setup. And it won't even show a gutter here, but you can customize that, of course. So you can access all those options from the I think it's in the paragraph options and span columns. So yeah, paragraph panel, drop down, span columns. That's where you can find the options, more detailed options, because obviously there on the top you won't find everything for this feature, but here you can find it more. So now we have the split column selected, and then it says we have 2 sub columns, and that's the proper definition for them, and we can always increase that. Obviously in this case it's hard to see it, we need more space. We can have a split before, and then it just defines it more, gives a little space, and then there is the inside gutter, which we can increase or decrease, and we can even have outside gutter on it. Okay, so that's span and split columns. Let's go to the next one. Balanced ragged lines. It's also a very useful feature. So what's first of all ragged lines? Whenever we have on the right side these type of edges, that's what we call ragged lines. Some of you might use justification to get rid of that, but in some cases that's not really good, because then we will start to have these so-called rivers in the paragraph, which is not really good. It has to move the words apart, and it's not really useful all the time. It's easier to read when it's not justified, the text. It just looks better when it's nicely aligned to the right, but actually it's easier to read when it's aligned to left or right. But in this case, we have these ragged lines on the right. So to be able to get rid of that, we have an option for that, and you can again find that under the paragraph options, and there you can see balanced ragged lines. Now actually it was turned on, it was better before. Let's just make a change on it. I want to have, and I think we have a paragraph here as well, we don't need that. But let's just have this all in one paragraph, and let's see what happens before and after. I'm going to make something like that, and then go to paragraph options and balanced ragged lines. It does a difference. Let's see now. This is width, and that's, oh, let's see, width. It doesn't make much difference in this case. It's not a good example. Usually it shows it better, but this is an option that I almost all the time have on, and it does, yeah, it does normalize the edge a little bit better than before. It's just good to know, and again, this is something you can set in a style and find under the paragraph panels drop down. Okay, it's something that I almost all the time have on. It visually tries to align the edge, even if it's not justified. Hyphenation, again, is something you can very easily control in InDesign, and there's a keyboard shortcut. You can see there, Control Command Option Shift H, or Control Alt Shift H on PC. So that's when you have a text frame selected, you can see that we can quickly turn on and off the hyphenation. But you can also find the option here in the paragraph panel. You can turn it off there as well. And who knows what decides where the hyphenation goes, like grammatically? How does InDesign know? Like this one is just a dummy text, so it's just a guessing where the hyphenation would go. But how does it know that it's English or German? It doesn't know.
No, I don't know.
You don't know. There's a language option for your paragraphs, so you can define that what language are you using, or what language is your text. Who knows where can we find that? So when we have a text selected, does anyone know where we can change the language? It's here, look, in the character panel, language UK, and it's not even just simply English. We have 4 types of English. I don't know what's the USA legal and medical differences in grammar. It's quite interesting that they have that. But definitely there's a UK and US English grammar as well. Plus we have lots of German language or grammar version, and my native language Hungarian is there as well. So it's quite a lot of languages we can use to set up. So if your text is in a different language, make sure you set the grammar up, because then things like hyphenation will work correctly, but there's other things as well, other features which will change in InDesign if you use the language correctly. Okay, I will come back a little bit to the language later as well. And by the way, when you get this file from me, all of these are there, so it's like notes for you, but it's good to take your own notes as well, of course. Okay, conditional text. Is there anyone here who uses conditional text in InDesign? No one. That's good, because then it will be useful. Conditional text is, again, when you have probably different languages or different, for example, currencies in a document. Let's just say it's a menu for a restaurant, and you want to print it out. That's like a franchise which is available in lots of countries, and you would like to have one source file which is used in all countries, and only the currency has to change. Now, in that case, instead of having 3 documents changing the currencies, you have one source document, and you just specify that which version is using which currency. So what you need to do is open the conditional text. I think it might be here on the right as well. That's the story. No, it doesn't put it there. That's glyphs. We have to go back to conditional text type, conditional text panel. And you can see I already set up conditions in this one, which means that whenever I select these texts, it shows that that's the American, that's the English, and that's the Hungarian conditions. And instead of opening different documents, all I need to do is to turn off Hungarian, turn off American, and then we have the English version. It's like turning on and off layers, but only for text. So you don't turn off layers, your text is still visible, only parts of your text will hide or show, and the best thing about it can reflow. So for example, if I need the American, I can turn that back on and it immediately goes in the place of the English one. Can you see the difference? So there's English, turn it off, then it reflows, so it takes away the space as well. If I want the Hungarian to come in front, I just turn off everything and the Hungarian reflows immediately. And the way you set this up, and this is not just for language versions, it's for different different versions of the copy as well can be used for. So if you have a brochure which is printed out for different audience, and there's just like, let's say, a different paragraph used at the end, instead of having 3 versions of the same document, just put all the copy in one text frame and highlight which one is which version, save it as a condition, and then just turn it on and off depending on whichever you need. Okay, so you can keep everything in one. So if you have several versions of copy, instead of having several versions of documents, use conditional text. That's the lesson in here. And let me just show you, if I have I press W, that will show us the condition with this zigzag line. So if I turn on English and American, we can see I have the colors as well visible. So that's the American one, and that's the English one with the blue color. And the way I can set this up, very easy. For example, if I select coffee and I say, okay, that's only visible in the English version, then I can set a condition for it, and it's immediately conditioned. Cappuccino is only available for the American version. It's immediately conditioned. So then, if I say, let me just press escape. If I say that I want to see the Hungarian version, then none of those will be visible. Or if I want to see the American version, then the coffee won't be visible, and vice versa. The cappuccino will disappear if I have only the English option open. Okay, so that's very, very easy to set up and very useful. And you can even have unconditional text. I mean, you don't have to do anything with the unconditional text. That's automatically enabled. The only thing you can't do is turning that off. So that is always visible. So that's everything where there is no conditions. So all the other text, you can't turn those off. Okay, and that's conditional text. Let's go to the next one. Indents and spaces. This is very easy. The indents and spaces you set up from your paragraph panel. So let me just, I think there might be a bit more show options. Yeah, there's more options here. Sometimes when you have a panel open, you might not see all the options, then just click on show options from the drop down menu. You know, it's always good to check these drop downs. There's so many additional options available, so it's not only what you can see here, there's so much more options available. So indents and spaces, these are the ones that you can find here in the just below the paragraph options. The alignment you can see on the top, and then below that you have the indents, so you can have the whole text indented from the left or the right. You can use the right one as well, or you can just indent the first lines of your paragraph or the last lines, which in this case doesn't work. And then you can also set up spaces between the paragraphs, and that's this option here, or space before or space after. And these are very useful options. So we already covered most of the panel. We covered drop caps and the indents and spacing, and then we have the alignment, which I usually use with keyboard shortcuts, but you can find them all here on the top. So Command and Shift or Control Shift on PC is the most commonly used keyboard shortcut combo for typography features in InDesign. And whatever you add to it will make the difference. So, for example, Command Shift L is aligned to left, R is aligned to right, J is justified, C is centered. So that's for the alignment. Command Shift and these characters that you can see there. And then on the next page, I'm going to give you more keyboard shortcuts. So we have. This is a list of the keyboard shortcuts. It's all for editing typing in InDesign. I'm not going to go through this. You can have a look at it and try it at home. You can see, for example, adding italic, bold, or underline is again Command Shift and then I, B, U. Changing the size is Command Shift plus dot or a comma. All caps, Command Shift K, that's very useful. So for example, if I select this here, Command Shift K becomes all caps, Command Shift K again goes back to normal casing. And then kerning and tracking is also very useful when you have a text. Let's just say I set this to all caps here with using the same feature, Command Shift K. And then if I want to move things around a bit, actually let me just change the font as well. If you have the character formatting control selected on the top and you have a type selected, you can press Command 6, which will highlight the fonts, so you don't have to go up and click there. And then you can just start typing the font's name. I would like to use Tryon. I will use Tryon Pro Regular. Okay, so we have the font assigned. And within this font, if I have the whole thing selected, and I want to change the spacing of it, do you know the definition, how it's called when you change the spacing between characters for a whole text? Kerning is when you change it individually, and when you change it on a whole paragraph, then it's called tracking. Tracking is the same thing and the same keyboard shortcut, just a bit differently called. So Alt, left and right will change tracking, the distance between the characters. And if I click anywhere here and change it individually, that's called kerning. It's like a visual alignment of the characters. And for example, if we have a text, let's just say world war, in that one, and I set the kerning back to normal. This is the kerning, by the way, here in the options. So I just set it back to 0, or tracking in this case. And if I zoom closer, you can see if I have these characters a bit closer, Alt left, that's the kerning, and probably O can go closer to W, and R can go as well a bit closer to O. So these are the individual alignments that can be very useful. And then you can see if I go back, this is how it looked before, and this is how it looks after. It's very minor changes, but these things can really matter, especially if you use all caps, and mainly for like like headings and titles. Whenever there's like a big text, then it's very important to make sure that you do this. Okay, there's so much more keyboard shortcut here. What I really would like you to get used to is also if you are typing in InDesign, which you might not need to do because you might get the copy from someone else, but you might need to type yourself as well or edit the type. Now, for editing the type, remember we have the story editor view. Pressing Command I will give you this. And here it might be a little bit easier to work with the text because there's no styling on it at all. And even if it's thread between different text frames, so it's divided between frames. You will still see it in one in this panel, but no matter where you are, these keyboard shortcuts will all work. So when you type, you can obviously use right and left, up and down to go between the lines instead of always using the mouse and clicking. But if you want to go a little bit more advanced, then you can hold down Command to jump between words while you use the arrows, right and left. So Command right and left jumps between words. Command up and down jumps between paragraphs. In this case, these are all paragraphs. Let me just go to another page where we have more text, like this one here. So Command up and down, you can see my cursor is jumping between the beginning of paragraphs. Command right, left jumps between words. Shift right and left will go and highlight or select text. Left will remove the selection or go the other way. We can combine Command and Shift or Control Shift to jump between words and select, or Command Shift up and down to jump between paragraphs and select them. Okay? And then we already talked about Alt, which is the kerning to change the text. And I think that's all. Let me just think about, probably that's all what you should know. Yes. Okay. So that's whenever you edit the text. And there's an option in InDesign. Is it possible to drag and drop text in InDesign? I mean, if I select that, is it possible to just drag and drop it to maybe in this paragraph? Yes? Is it possible? Is it possible by default? Yes. By default, it's not available. That's the interesting thing. See, I selected it, and in Word or in other like pages, you would be able to do it. Here, no. Here, just simply select, and you can't just drag and drop. But if you go to Preferences, you can find it. I think it's on the somewhere here in the interface, or no, probably Type. It will be Type. Drag and drop text editing, enable in Layout View. Okay, in Story Editor it's available by default, but in the Layout View in here, it's not available, so that's the option you have to turn on if you want to use it. So drag and drop text editing and enable in Layout View. Now if I select it, I can drag and drop it there. Okay, quite useful. I actually like to use this. I don't know why it's not available here by default. Probably because they don't want you to accidentally drag and drop text. But if you know what you're doing, then it's not a problem. Okay, yeah, the bullets and numbering is not that difficult. I won't go into that. Baseline grid is very important. Now, is there anyone who knows why we need a baseline grid, or what's the most important reason why we need it? Yes?
Use it a lot in publications and magazines to ensure the lines are
Exactly. You can imagine if you have a book or a magazine, sometimes it's a bit see-through. You can see what's on the next page. And if the lines are not aligned between the pages, you might see a shift, and that can be very distracting. When you see the next page text is a little bit out of balance. I mean, it's shifted a little bit down or up. And also, even on one page, you might have different text frames. Like here, you can see the difference that they are not aligned. The text frame, the top might be aligned, but that doesn't mean that the text is aligned. So the lines, the baselines of each of these characters or sentences are not aligned in these two frames. But there's an option for that, the baseline grid. Now, for the baseline grid, that's the thing that we have to enable, just like the other features I showed you, like the conditional text or hyphenation of things like that. So in the paragraph panel, this is the option align to baseline grid. So that's again only visible, I think, if you have the options visible. Yeah. So if you choose show options, that's when you will see this feature here. You can say do not align to baseline grid or please align. So let's see what's happening. If I say do not align, it jumps up just like the other one, and now they are aligned to each other, but they are not aligned to the baseline grid of the document. And if I press W, that's the baseline grid. so we can see the lines. It's just like in an exercise book, the lines. And if I turn it on, you see it immediately snaps to the baseline grid. So it snaps to it wherever it is. And if I select the other text, like this one here, that already has the baseline grid on, if I turn it off, again, it won't follow the baseline grid. I have it on, then it follows it. And if I move it around, then it moves around. And the only thing you might see is that this one actually uses a different baseline grid. It's not the same as the document behind it. The reason for that is because for this text frame itself, there is a baseline option. So it has a custom baseline grid. And that's intentionally wanted to show you that it's possible to have a baseline grid for the document and a custom one for your text frame, which can be useful in some cases, but in this case I would just turn it off and then it immediately aligns to the same grid. So now both of them uses the same grid and it will be the same throughout the whole document. So wherever I move my text, it will always snap to one of the baseline grids. Okay, very useful. And to know where you can find it, you can find these options in the grids. So you go to Preferences, Grids, and this is where you can set up the document baseline grid. So this is where you change it. And it's good to know that some of the features and preferences in InDesign are global, and some of them are only available, only changes things in the selected document. And these options can be set to global if you don't have any documents open. And you change this, that means every time a new document comes up, it will always use that new setting. If you change it while a document is open, then it only changes for the open document, but the next one will be still the default settings. Okay, so it depends on whether you have a document open or not. Okay, and yeah, it makes sense what it means. You can change the color of the baselines and so on and so forth. Okay, so we have 5 minutes left, so let me just go a little bit faster to the following couple of options. Let me see how much we have. We have quite a lot, but I will just be a little bit faster now. So we have inset spacing of the text, which can be very useful when you want to use frames, visible graphic frames around your text. And the inset spacing is again, can be found in the text frame options, which is Command B. And here you can see inset spacing. So that means I can have a frame, which is there, that's the text frame edge, but inside I still have like a margin inside the text frame itself, which will contract the text area or it can expand. Obviously, when you have a graphic frame like that, you don't want the text to be too close to that frame. That's when you start using inset spacing. Okay. And next one is also there in the text frame options, vertical justification. Vertical justification is a term not much used and heard, but it's also as important as the horizontal justification of when you align paragraphs. Again, it's here, and it's set to justify in this case, which means that even though the text is much less, it's only like that much, but if I set it to, let's just say, justify, it will extend it vertically. What does it change? What feature of the text is changed with this? There's a term for it, like kerning, tracking, leading. Very good, well done. Yeah, leading is changed automatically based on my frame size. So if I change my frame vertically, the leading will be still changed, or it can be going the other way as well. Very useful feature. Again, similar to balanced columns, it balances out the text in your frame based on the vertical size. And then you can also use center, top, and bottom. By default, it's always top, but you can change this. It's good to know that. Okay, text wrap is a very useful feature, very easy to use, but there's quite a lot to it, so it's good to look into it, because it can work together with alpha channels, paths, and it can even detect edges around images. Let's just see what does it mean quickly. So if I have an image, oh yeah, by the way, how can you select an image when it's behind or on top of text frame. So I have the text frame, and the text frame actually comes all the way down here, and there's my image. And whenever I want to select my image, it still has the text frame selected. What? Very good. Control or Command click will select behind. And then when I have it behind, I can move it around. But this doesn't have any text wrap around it. Do I have to assign text wrap on the text or on the image? Yes, very good. Again, a bit controversial, but we just have to learn that it has to be aligned there. Alt W, Command Alt W is the text wrap. Let me just put this panel out for now. So that's the text wrap options. As soon as I turn it on, the text will flow around the image, and we can assign again spacing around it. So we can have offset all around it to make sure the text is not too close. And whenever I move this image, the text will always move around. And is there a way, like I moved it up, and now the text on the top, the gray text as well moved. Is there a way to make sure that the text wrap will only affect this text but not that one? And if there is, where is it?
Text frame options.
Very good. Very good. If I select this, so just to make sure you understand, I want to make sure that so the text wrapping is set up to this image, and it affects every text in my document. Wherever I move it, it will affect everything. But if I want to make sure that there is one text frame which shouldn't be affected, then I go into the text frame options for that text frame, and there's the option Ignore Text Wrap. So if I select that, look, it immediately overrides or ignores the image completely. So even though it's using text wrap, that text won't be affected, only the other text in the image. And just one more thing, and I think that's the end. I have to finish. This image has also a text wrap on it, but it's using a Detect Edges option. So it has this option, the wraparound object shape, Detect Edges, which means that it has a white background, but even though it has a white background, it could still find the edges automatically. I mean, InDesign could detect the edges of the flower, and I can see that it very nicely follows that edge. Okay, so that's just about text wrap. And yeah, these other options, again, as I said, from my notes actually, you can find out what these features are. If you learn these features, honestly, it saves you so much time, and you will be much more effective in Photoshop. And don't be scared of the typography features in InDesign. I know there's a lot of them, but it's good to explore. Good to see, okay, what is this button? I never used that. Let's just try to find out. It's actually very easy to find out things. You just select the text, change something, and oh, so that's what it does. It's good to explore. Just sometimes, instead of browsing or going to Facebook, just spend some time in InDesign and explore these little things. Or just go online and you can find so many free tutorials. Okay, of course, so come to Academy class and from our courses. Okay, do you have any questions? Yes?
In languages, when you set the language, does that shift whether the characters go in from the left or from the right?
I think
if
yes.
If I set it for Hebrew or
yes,
Arabic?
Yes, it will be, the orientation will be different as well.
Brilliant. And the other thing was the kerning pairs. Can you set up for that font, for that face, can you set up kerning pairs that will be used repeatedly whenever you use that?
If it's set up as a style, yes. In a style, a paragraph style, you can. Not for a font specifically, but for a style, you can set up kerning. So it will always be the same. If it's defined as a...
So I can specify a pair of letters and the kerning will always apply to that pair?
Oh, I know what you mean. No, I'm not sure. That's a very good question. It would be useful. So if, for example, with that Try-on Pro, if it's like the T and the O or the W and the A should be always closer.
Well, the fonts have gotten so much better, but 1,000 years ago when...
Yeah.
They weren't, and you really had to be able to separate.
I'm not sure if you can do
Okay.
that because that would change the font definition. What you can always do is edit the font itself if you have a font editor application like Font Lab, and there you can edit that, so it will define it. But otherwise, in InDesign, I don't think there's a way to do that. Any more questions? That was yes.
Yeah, and on the baseline grids, when I've used it, can you customise the spacing between the heading and the first line of the text in the paragraph? Because when I tried to do that, if I just want 2 mil after it, it won't do it, because obviously it's going to the grid. So it's just leaving the automatic space between.
If your heading is and the paragraph is in the same frame, you mean?
Yeah.
No, you can't really separate the heading. You should have it in a separate frame and make sure that frame uses a custom baseline. That's the only way you can do it. If the heading and the text is in the same frame, you can't really separate it.
Because what I've gone, the way that I've overcome that is that I've gone and changed the custom, the leading custom, which is then maybe smaller, because it always appears quite a big space.
Yeah, unfortunately in this case you have to separate the frames. You can still have them connected to each other, but have the heading in a separate frame with a custom baseline and the other one with following the normal baseline. Probably that's the easiest way to do it. Okay, any more questions? No more questions, then thanks a lot for your attention and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.